Morning, friends. It's about 6:30 on Saturday morning, and I'm here with my cup of coffee, and y'all fine folks. And we're going to talk about leadership restructure today. Ultimately, these are proposed changes that require a vote by the general membership. I want to talk to you about why we want them, and then later we'll talk about the bylaws that support them. So this particular document that I'm sharing with you right now is not exactly this is not up for a vote, but the bylaws that support this structure are. In January, you'll be asked to vote for these changes. And as I talked to you yesterday in that session yesterday, we talked about the changes that needed to be made and why, and now I'm just going to sit down and talk with you about the nitty-gritty of what that looks like. So right now we have a leadership structure for the executive board, which is really very beautiful. The president-elect gets elected. They serve for 2 years as president-elect, kind of learning the board, learning the position, learning the job. They serve as 2 years as president, kind of fully executing the leadership of the board. And then they serve as 2 years for 2 years as institutional knowledge as past president and involved in that way. So it's a 6-year track, and it's an elected position. We're not changing anything about how that works. Then we have a vice president structure, and vice presidents right now, our current bylaws specify that there are 4 of them and what they're for: band VP, choir VP, orchestra VP, and general music VP. So the bias that we talked about in the last session toward high school ensembles and traditional Western offerings, all of that is built into our bylaw structure and our leadership. So in order to challenge that, we need to challenge the structure and the rules that provide for that structure. So we keep band VP, we keep choir VP, we keep orchestra VP because those programs are beautiful and solid and vibrant, and we're proud of them, and we should be. And then we add structure to support the development of other programs that we're also proud of and will also be vibrant and will also serve students who are not being served well now. The general music position, it's somewhat offensive to think that there are 3 positions for ensembles and 1 position for everything else that is not an ensemble. And so we want to address that and be really honest about how that structure created the environment that we're in right now. We're going to rename that and kind of split it out into a few different categories. We're going to rename that elementary classroom VP. And elementary is that classroom VP is a beautiful position because we all know that the only place in which every single student in Minnesota gets touched is at the elementary level. As the students get older, there's some amount of opt-out that they can participate in. They can choose other things, or they can participate in it in a less intentional way as an elective or not as a core. And at the elementary level, every single student receives music services. So that position needs to be reflected more appropriately. Then I want to talk to you, there's elementary classroom, and then there's middle level, secondary education, middle schoolers and high schoolers involved in classroom music. And this is about experiential education in order to expose students to a variety of things, but it isn't necessarily skill-based long-term development. Everything is skill-based, right? Whether the skill is to be able to learn and adapt to different environments and tasks that are being offered to you, but it's not the same thing as an ensemble development of a skill set in performance. Having a VP that is focused on the mid-level brain and the secondary level brain, and how that relates to general music offerings at that level. That's a specified focus point for that VP. Additionally, we recognize that we have a band VP, a choir VP, and an orchestra VP, and then we have a whole host of other ensembles that don't fit into that. And so that's what this position is about. It's about mid-level and secondary level ensemble development, Ensemble Plus. It's just a clunky name, and I acknowledge that, but it's ensembles that don't fit into traditional Western ensembles, right? So guitar ensemble, guitar orchestra, non-standard instrumentation groups for whatever purpose, or mixed instrumentation groups between vocal and instrumental, non-traditional instruments, modern band, global ensembles, anything that really doesn't fit into that model of band, choir, orchestra. We want to make sure that those programs are really receiving the same kinds of services and education focus and space in our industry as these other more traditional accepted offerings. We keep band, choir, orchestra as is, but we make sure that there's an understanding that it isn't band, all-state band VP. It is band advocacy at all levels, woodwind, percussion, and brass pedagogy at all levels, and that we really adjust our thinking to it being about advocacy for band programs, choir programs, orchestra and string programs at all levels. Jazz is a position that we have at the Council of Chairs level currently, and there's a lot of programming based around jazz and jazz education in our state. And so VP is an appropriate place to put that so that it is matched with other student offering programs, which is what that VP level is for, student offerings directly from MMEA. So jazz, yes, the all-state jazz band, but also jazz advocacy at all levels, instrumental, vocal, and not just large ensemble, combo, and improvisation, skill development. And then on the side here, an acknowledgement of collegiate learners in school environments, not just teaching these ensembles and these education programs for collegiate students, whether they go into music or not, and then also the students that come out as future music educators in our field. Having programs surrounding those areas would be great. Now, I can see in this that there is already that there's a bias toward actual school environments that needs to be addressed also, and that's kind of the next step, is to figure out how to address things that are outside of traditional school environments. There's kind of two large chunks for those space. One is taken care of in this Council of Chairs down here, which is community music chairs, and it's about community music schools or groups outside of the traditional setting of public or private school. Private studios, for example, community ensembles, for example. And then in addition to that community music focus is, I really think, early childhood development as well. We do not have currently much representation or programming or support or awareness of early childhood development in music, and how that benefits every learner in Minnesota. So those VP positions, as the bylaws are being revised, are going to be not defined specifically. The number of and the labels of are going to be removed from the bylaws. Instead, the function of will be defined. So the function of VPs is to offer student-facing programs directly from MMEA, facilitated by MMEA. So that's festivals, that's experiential opportunities, that's regional conferences for students, that's all state programs, that's, you know, whatever else that we can develop that's directly offering things to students from MMEA or through MMEA. The next level down is not level, but the next chunk of our board is region representation. Region representatives make sure that geographically that we're serving people across the geography of our region, and that those that are outstate Minnesota or those that are urban Minnesota receive the same focus, or not necessarily the same focus, the appropriate focus for their needs across regions, and that we're able to connect with people who feel further away for whatever reason. And the bylaw adjustment that we're going to ask for support for will offer a stagger in terms. We're going to take half of our region reps that are currently serving on the board and extend them 1 year, and then elect 4 of them new to serve a 2-year term. So every year we're electing half of our region reps, and then it will be a staggered term. That is the bylaw revision that we're proposing. All right, in addition to all of that is this Council of Chairs. Council of Chairs is currently defined in the bylaws as must be an editor. There must be a representative from the Minnesota State High School League, and there must be a representative from the state agency that creates standards for graduation. So those positions are here: Minnesota State High School League, Perpich Center for Music Education, the specialist that helps us with that, and then the editor here. Those bylaws, though, make it difficult to do work should any of those organizations or any of those positions not be filled. There is no provision in our bylaws for what do we do if. You know, for example, what if we moved into a situation in which the state of Minnesota did not have an art standard based on music, and there wasn't an organization that could do that? What if Minnesota State High School League had infrastructure issues and wasn't able to place somebody as a representative on our board? What if for whatever reason we weren't able to fill an editor position that would prevent us from operating as a board? So we're going to adjust that language. The Council of Chairs is a non-voting body within the Board of Directors, and it's defined at the discretion of the president with the approval of the board. We're going to institute term limits on those positions. They can be reappointed, but term limits are important for the health and vitality of any board. What we're looking at is using that Council of Chairs as it's intended, which is to address bias and to take information that would affect all of our levels, all of our programming, all of our representation, and put people in those positions to help us make those decisions better for every student. Advocacy Chairs is really about taking the tools that we have, all of the information that we have about all of these programs and about all of this advocacy for all of these age groups, about every student, and making sure that we can advocate with our administrators and that we have the tools to help one another across these kind of isolate areas in Minnesota. And so advocacy is really about strengthening our advocacy language that we use with others, but also strengthening our joint advocacy tool as an industry, communicating that well and putting together a packet of things that we can use, resources. Editor chairs is about communications, about taking our information and making sure it's available and readily available to all of our educators. Retired members chair, that's about retaining the institutional knowledge that is our educators who have retired, making sure that that can filter down and support educators who are still in the field and support our students lifelong. Purpose Center, we've talked about that. That's about making sure that we are connected with the standards for learning in our state and professional development relicensure for our music educators. MED chair is equity and diversity, and it is insulting to think that one person is in charge of our biases that keep us from being equitable and our biases against appropriate diversity. But what the MED chair does is helps us to individually be voices for equity and diversity in the things that we can see in our own person. So as you're looking across the board, you say, you know what, that language there is exclusionary. That language there is part of a system that others, groups of people, that system there is something that we want to look at as a system that needs to be adjusted to be more inclusive. And that's really what that position is about. It's about cross discipline, cross age, cross region equity to make sure that we're doing our best work for every student. Minnesota State High School League, make sure that we're in touch with that system and how those divisions are working in the competitions and regulations that keep everybody participating in music. Community music chairs and ability inclusion specialists. Those are two positions that don't currently exist on our council of chairs. The community music chair is a future acknowledgement of things outside of the traditional education environment, school environment. So private studios, community ensembles, etc., and then ability inclusion specialist, and that's talking about physical ability and neurodiversity and making sure that students are able to participate in a meaningful way and get the best benefit out of our music classes through adaptive approaches, music therapy and accommodation. That's basically our leadership structure and what we're looking at. We'll talk about the bylaws and the actual voting mechanisms for that. But what I want you to realize as we're looking at these things is we're asking for a bylaw vote in January, and there's going to be a lot of discussion about that. And I'm going to talk to you a lot about this, about these changes and why, because I feel like that transparency is really important. But I also want you to realize that every single one of those vice presidents is a position in which we need people elected. And I really want to see not just one great candidate for that job. I want to see 4 great candidates for each of those jobs. We are not going to go straight by nomination this year. You can self-nominate. And I encourage you to do so. Look at those positions and say, heck yeah, I want to be part of that change. And I really think this is where I could have a really powerful voice and advocacy that would help change and support programs. So basically we have a limited scope of reach right now, right? The people who are already involved in MMEA are the ones who are listening to me. But what we need are the people who are eyeballs deep in the industry and have not felt the relevance of this organization yet. We need that group of people also to be part of changing what our state looks like, and how we serve every student and how we support every educator in music. So that means that if I know a person who has a killer guitar ensemble in their school and has been teaching that way for 2 decades, and I want to call them up and say, you know what, Francis, you've been doing this thing that's been killer for 2 decades. I really want you to get involved in developing that opportunity for more students outside of your school to take your skill set and leverage it for more students in Minnesota. And I really want you to run for this position because I think you'd be fantastic. If every person watching this picked 4 fantastic educators and encouraged them to run for a VP position, our next ballot would be killer. And then I think what's really important after that is what happens, and we'll talk about elections in a little bit, but what happens when a really quality educator puts their name up for a vote and they're not chosen? There's some feels involved with that. But here's the deal. I really, really liked being part of an orchestra or a band in which I was the last chair, because it meant that everyone else that was chosen was really good. And my opportunity to be involved in that organization meant I would learn something, and that performance opportunity would change people. And I feel the same way about this. I feel the same way about this leadership structure, that if I were putting my name in a hat for a vote and I gave it my all and didn't win, it would mean that leadership structure was really strong. And then I would be like, all right, cool. I still want to be a part. How can I volunteer? What about next time? What about next vote? Is there a place I can serve? Because I want to be a part of that ensemble. So in January, we're going to vote on new bylaws. We're going to vote on this structure, and then we're going to vote on a pack of really great educators to be leaders in this in this team. And the reason we do it is because we think that music education is important for every student, and we want to support every music educator. So pour another cup of coffee and let's get to work. There we go. End meeting.